I feel like I should have. Okay, you got it. Great.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. We're really excited to share everything we've been doing for the past 3.5 months. Our project, in partnership with the Canadian Tibetan Association of Ontario, focuses on the challenges faced by Tibet while navigating the Canadian immigration system, as well as the implications of their unique geopolitical circumstances of Tibet. My team and I are really looking forward to introducing you to our project. My name is Ashley.
I'm Anjana.
And I am Nivedita.
So while our client and the Tibetan community are fully aware of the history of Tibet and everything that they're going through, it is vital for you guys to understand why we developed an immigration toolkit. So we will be going through certain components of the history of Tibet, as well as to better convey the experiences that Tibetan immigrants in Canada face. So the presentation will follow a pathway beginning with the issues that we found to be the basis of our research. And then Anjana will walk you through the history of Tibetan forced migration to India, as well as the key themes of our research. And then lastly, Nivedita will introduce our immigration toolkit, which was our final deliverable, as well as go into the main components. So the fundamental issue stems from the absence of a sovereign nation following the Chinese forceful assumption of authority over Tibet. And because of this, Tibetans face legal and humanitarian challenges. Additionally, due to the lack of formal status in any country, this can lead them to experience an undetermined legal status where they are unsuccessfully able to obtain citizenship from countries of exile such as India. And because of these documentation gaps and geopolitical challenges, many Tibetans immigrants struggle when navigating the Canadian immigration system, which does not account for the specific barriers that they face. So to further understand the issue, is necessary to provide context to understand these barriers and challenges. So the three components that we found to be necessary was firstly the geopolitical angle. So the situation is further complicated by statelessness and geopolitical displacement, as many Tibetans are born in India but are unable to obtain citizenship in India. Next is the fear of community erasure. The Tibetan identity and culture is very important for Tibetans, especially in the diaspora abroad. And lastly, socioeconomic security. Due to their undocumented status in Canada, many can struggle to access essential services, including healthcare, education, stable housing, and stable employment. So now that we have a little bit of background to the issue, I'm just going to briefly get into how we conducted our research. So firstly, a desk review. We conducted a literature review as well as a document analysis, which included the analysis of relevant case law. Additionally, we wanted to speak with people in the field with lived experiences. So we also conducted interviews with academic scholars as well as legal experts and community advocates. And this provided us a lot of valuable context and understanding on the issue. And then we all together grouped everything into key themes using thematic analysis. So now with further understanding on the issues and challenges, Anjana will walk you now through Tibetan flight to India, as well as the key themes of our research.
Thank you, Ashley. Now, before understanding what this speak is all about, let's take a Tibetan flight and understand the history first. Let's go back in time to about 66 years from today, that is 1959, which is a landmark year where at least hundreds and thousands of Tibetans were forced to leave their home and land and look up to the neighboring nations like India. While India opened its borders, in 1960, like about a year of time, the Tibetans were able to form an elected representative body that is called Central Tibetan Administration, which worked out a resettlement package deal with India that basically talks about how Tibetans and Indians should coexist in this new scenario. Now, between 1960 and 2000, about 40 years of time, there are many things that happened. And one of this thing is this epic picture that was shot in 1971, where Tibetans were offered a resettlement package by Canada, and they were greeting then Trudeau, who was accepting with all smiles the greetings, right? And it is also important in Canada immigration history because it is the kind of non-European immigration that marked a benchmark for Canada to open its doors for people who are not Europeans. And now let's come back to 2000s. 2000s is the era where the Western countries like US and again Canada offered resettlement packages to Tibetans. And now everything is going on very good until the immigration challenges started surfacing. It is very unique in nature for Tibetans. And to add on to it, in 2009, India made it very clear now Tibetans are no more refugees, but they will be given a foreigner status. And then in 2014, if at all a Tibetan wanted to be a citizen in India, it became very hard for them because now India states that one of your parents had to be a person who holds an Indian passport. Otherwise, we wouldn't give you a citizenship in India. Now, let's see what's happening in the present state with the key themes that emerged from our research and analysis. Right? These are the 4 key themes that emerged. Even today, they face statelessness. They are not the citizens of any of the nations, and they are seen as undocumented because the moment you don't have universally accepted documents that states your identity like birth certificate or a passport, but you just rely on a renewable registration certificate or an identity certificate which are subjected to expiry, you become an undocumented person. And of course, they carry this tag of intergenerational refugee status even today. And with all these complexities, there are severe knowledge gaps in the immigration system and cultural barriers as well. Now, with these themes, let's understand this comparative pathways. Let's take 3 individuals here. One is a citizen of sovereign nation, other is a refugee, and last is our Tibetan who are trying to immigrate. They all have to go through an application process, right? And they produce their travel documents, whatever they have. And in this case, Canadian immigration system would verify the documents. For a citizen, it wouldn't affect them if there is a refusal because they always have a free movement. And for a refugee, they may be given an asylum or they may be deported, but still they have a hope to go back to their nation with vulnerability. For the Tibetan, if they are denied asylum, then that's it. That becomes stateless. They cannot go back to the country of exile because their documents are like a ticking time bomb, which are subjected to expiry. And in a nutshell, if you see a citizen like me would have all the green flags in this context of immigration from legal status to security. For a refugee, it is a 50 and 50. And for a Tibetan, apart from having a very vulnerable travel document, everything else holds a red flag. And now with this understanding, we would like to invite Nivedita, who would walk you through the immigration toolkit and demonstrates why it is our durable solution for this complex issue.
Thank you, Anjana and Ashley, for laying down a strong foundation of our issue. Now that we've explored the history and key challenges that Tibetans face in Canada, I'd like to pull your focus on our immigration toolkit. This is our key proposed solution. So the current system, the immigration system in Western countries, they often misinterpret the lived experiences of Tibetans, and which leads to like misassessments and place a very undue burden of proof on Tibetans when they're applying for immigrations. This is what we are trying to bridge. This is what we're trying to bridge with this toolkit, the knowledge gap between the lived realities of the community and the Canadian immigration system. We wanted to develop a toolkit because we wanted to create a document which is accessible, tangible, and is immediately usable. We understand that policy reforms are needed, but we also recognize that a lot of policy work lives in theory. And we wanted something, and we understood that Tibetan challenges are very urgent and very practical. The toolkit has 3 core components. So let me walk you through the framework of our toolkit. First, we begin by providing a contextual framework of all the historical developments, like the historical Tibetan migration from Tibet as a country, the legal limitations from India, and how these create very critical documentation and identification gaps for these people. Second, we have provided a very detailed pathway analysis, which breaks down all the available pathways to Tibetan immigrants. Second, we have documentation strategies, which provides individual immigrant applicants to logistically approach their applications compellingly. Third, we have case prep tools for lawyers. So we have case precedents, we have scenarios which have worked in the past and which are more likely to succeed. The toolkit is designed for primarily 3 key audiences: the community, lawyers, and policymakers. So for community, the toolkit provides step-by-step legal navigation, documentation templates like affidavits, community verification, and family sponsorship, things like those. We have case preparation guidance on how to prepare your case in the best way possible. And we also have advice on how to work with legal representatives who don't have expertise in Tibetan immigration or Tibetan history. For lawyers, we have relevant case precedents, cases that have worked, sample affidavits, application templates, analysis of legal gaps that Tibetans face, organized case materials, and effective advocacy strategies that have proven to work in previous cases. We wanted to include a hypothetical example of how this toolkit would be used in reality. So in this case, a Tibetan comes to Canada with an Indian registration certificate and a school ID. At first, the lawyer says that this is not enough. But we're hoping that when this toolkit is produced to them, the lawyer is able to understand how they can explain the documentation gaps and how, by providing context and by providing alternative documentation, they're able to explain their applications. So this interaction basically captures the heart of our project, which is changing outcomes through changing understanding of the project. We also recognize that broader policy reforms are needed. So we are hoping that this toolkit will also work as a foundation for broader policy systemic changes by providing awareness about the challenges that Tibetans face, providing insights on how to change these reforms, creating a policy dialogue within the necessary areas, and ultimately leading to systemic change that can create a distinctive pathway for immigrants like Tibetans. We thank our client for their continued support for the past 4 months. And thank you for your engagement, and we open the floor for any questions.
What a fantastic start to our day. Okay, hello, good morning. Welcome to the symposium. Can you see us okay?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, well, so I'm gonna welcome you to our symposium. These are representatives joining us from Toronto, the Canadian Tibetan Association of Ontario, and I will open the floor to you to ask the first question to the students.
Well, my name is Sonam Lankar, and I have here Kelsang Namgyal, who's been involved in this project from the day one. And probably all the students know we've been communicating with Kelsang, and you guys been asking many questions with Kelsang, and he's been very helpful in this project. So I like to say thank you to Kelsang La also. And overall the presentation looks really good, and it's in a really in depth. Now once when this documents make into a real document, and then this might be very helpful for us for our future case, especially in Toronto, because where we have lots of Tibetans who are undocumented, and they are really going through a difficult stage. So I think these kind of document will be very helpful. Thank you.
Hi there. So my name's Kelsang, as Mr. Sonam just introduced me to you. So yeah, looking at the presentation just now, I'm really thrilled and excited. I'm really happy. Would like to congratulate the team for this job. And there's not, I don't have any particular questions as of now. What I see is like the way, the vastness that you've, the time, the depth, and the vastness that you've seen in this project is really nice. So I think you've covered everyone. You've covered individuals like us Tibetans. You've also covered the lawyers who'd be really important in this project. And then, of course, the dialogue or the decision makers. So I think it gives a complete picture of the whole project. So I'm just looking forward to all the details, how it works out. Yeah, in particular, I don't have any questions. Just would like to congratulate the whole team for doing such an in-depth kind of study. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sunam and Kalsingla. We're going to turn it over. I know you know Tsering, Shakya. Professor Tsering's going to ask the first question from the audience here at the symposium.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Tibetan Association Ontario for working with us, and congratulations to the students. This topic is something new to you, and investigating situation in India and here is, you're looking at legal stages in really a lot of different places and doing that, and you've done a really great job. Let me ask one more question. Is that in Canada, I don't know whether you know that there are said to be nearly 500,000 undocumented citizens in Canada, and Tibetans are a tiny part of that. Compared to the Tibetan situation, how would you sort of compare with the other undocumented communities in Canada?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for your support throughout this project. I think without your support, we wouldn't have been able to do what we were able to do. We thought about it when we were scoping out our project. We were thinking about other undocumented people, and the situation is quite different for Tibetans because of not having a physical home to go back to. But when we were designing our toolkit, we were thinking that maybe the broader sort of recommendations or the broader outline can also apply to them. Obviously, the toolkit is designed in a way that's like more cultural. It's tilted towards the Tibetan cultural community, but I think the broader implications would also apply to other undocumented diaspora in Canada.
Okay. And other questions, I've been dealing with Canadian immigration citizens for ages, and trying to urge them to grant sort of a favorable humanitarian grounds for the Tibetan applicants on the reason you stated that there's no place for them to return. But do you think the Canadian government's reason for not granting humanitarian rights to remain for Tibetans?
I think one reason that we came up with during our research, that one sort of broader idea that we came across during our research was that usually Western immigration systems are very standardized and they are very one box fits all situations, and they don't really create distinctive pathways for different diaspora or different kinds of people or diverse audiences. And I think the government and the immigration system is a little bit closed off and is more tilted towards having a standardized process that helps more people in general rather than like a distinctive small minority.
Okay, thank you. I hope your document and your work will be sort of convince the Canadian government to grant them favorable decisions.
That's the hope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tsering. Okay, we have some time for audience. Oh, perfect. Mia, welcome. Great to see you.
I'm Mia Yen, a former practitioner fellow here at SPPGA, but also a bureaucrat. And I do see similarities actually in terms of the Tibetan folks. I lived in India. I was responsible of Northwest India, and I also lived in Myanmar. So I see similarities with the Rohingya as well, who after generations don't have citizenship and freedom of movement, et cetera. So from a bureaucrat's perspective, you mentioned one of the audiences that you've targeted is policymakers. And I'm curious as to what kinds of tools or things that you've developed to try and both educate and change policymakers? I mean, laws are created by Parliament. So is there, for example, a Tibetan Friendship Association amongst the parliamentarians? Is there a Tibetan National Day that, an organization could sort of bring people together and try and educate them? Have there been outreach to people within IRCC who are the decision makers? In terms of, is this a decision that's made in Canada, for example, or are these decisions that are made overseas in India? Because I can tell you that the immigration section in India has been decimated since 41 diplomats have been declared PNG'd, and then 6 others were sort of, so the visa section in 2 of our consulates are closed. And so now it's only sort of Delhi that's managing the visa process for all of India and Bhutan and Nepal. So I'm curious in terms of what kinds of tools and outreach you would suggest that might be able to educate and help policymakers understand the unique circumstances. I've visited Tibetan refugee settlements within Himachal Pradesh in India. I've met with the CTA as well, but those are very high expectations to try and meet and manage from a Canadian government perspective. So I'm curious in terms of what you've done on that front. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia, for your question. I think this was one of the major challenges that we sort of encountered when we were scoping out our project, which is why we chose to develop a toolkit, because we knew that the systemic change that you're talking about, it takes a lot of authoritative work. It takes a lot of work with actual immigration officials and official people. So, which is why we said that the document should serve as a key component when the policy reform will be taken out. So the toolkit in itself doesn't have any tools for policymakers, but it sets out a foundation to explain how Tibet is different. And the language that we've used and the design that we've used is in the back of our mind, we kept it that we wanted it to make sense to Canadian immigration officials who don't understand what is happening, what the situation is, and how it was laid out and how it played out through the history, which is why we also told everyone here about the history, because that was very important. So I think that's how we thought about it when we were creating out our toolkit, that we knew that we can't, as a student team in 3.5 months, can't make any systemic changes, and we can't convince the government to lay out an immigration pathway only for Tibetans or stateless people. But we hope that through our work, we'll be able to create some sort of movement in the policy reform section, and we would be able to make meaningful change in Tibetans' life and who are looking for belonging in Canada. Thank you.
Yeah, we have time for one more question, so we'll just bring the we need the microphone for online.
Thank you for your presentation. My name is Nishi. I'm a second year MPPJ student. I just wanted to know, I understand 3.5 months and you have developed a toolkit, how effective it will be. You have not tested it as of now, I understand, and probably not lawyers or community won't have used it. So how confident are you that it will be effective?
I think that while we were doing interviews, we spoke with a lawyer and he talked about how very fundamentally, a lot of lawyers who have Tibetan clients, they just don't understand the history of Tibet. And so that, which is so fundamental and basic, can actually just make a big difference, because if a lawyer with their Tibetan client doesn't understand, Tibet is not a sovereign nation and all the implications with that, a part of our toolkit is just basically education on the history. And so I think the community is so open, the lawyers that we've spoken to. So I think if they're willing and able to read it and understand it, and I think if the community as a whole starts using it, even just bits of it, and then they don't have to use the entire thing, just the fundamental basics of the education and the background, everybody seemed very open to it. I think they want something like this. So I think they're definitely very open to using it.
Great. We have time for one more quick question from the audience. Yeah, maybe we'll take one at the back because that's so rare that we get a chance to do that in the symposium.
Anjana, Nivedita, Ashley.
Thank you for such an amazing first presentation. You all truly have done an amazing job. What was the most interesting thing you've learned throughout this whole process? And I hear from each of you, that would be great.
So the first ever interesting fact for me is like I never knew being a citizen would be so privileged. I always thought that I didn't understand from that lens how it would be like some things I took it for granted, right? It is so difficult to be born as a refugee and your fate is decided by some high level documents, right? And somebody has designed it like you have to live as a refugee. So that's the most interesting dimension of intersectional lens that I now developed apart from the other core vulnerable dimensions that I earlier had.
I think just building up on what Anjana said, I would think the most surprising thing or interesting thing I learned throughout this process was how difficult it is for one community to apply for immigration, which was so simple for me to go to a website, put my documents in and apply. But for Tibetans, the bureaucratic hurdles, the cultural hurdles that they have to cross to get that done is so much more harder. So I think that was really that stood out to me throughout this research process.
I think for me, it was just like how close and enthusiastic the Tibetan community is. Every single person that we talked to was so enthusiastic about this project from day one. And it was very enjoyable speaking with everyone. And I think even though it's a very small number of Tibetans in Canada, it's still a very important issue. And I think they get overlooked because of that. So I think we're like really excited for whatever next steps happen with this.
That was a great note to end on. Ashley, any final words, Mr. Sunam or Kelsang?
Yes. So on behalf of the Canadian Tibetan Association of Ontario, the board members and all the members here in Toronto, would like to thank UBC, and also I'd like to thank Krista for coordinating all this, and also like to thank Professor Tsering for advising and guiding on this project. And especially I'd like to thank Nivedita, Anjana, and Ashley Bra for working so hard and coming up with this project. So, moving forward, again, we will take guidance from you how we're gonna coordinate this into a booklet so that, now right now the things are changing in federal government as well as election is approaching soon. So we don't know which government will come. So once those settle, then we will be approaching all the MPs, and so that we can able to make use of this project, and so that this will be very helpful for our people who are really in need, who are in Toronto. Thank you so much on behalf of the CTAO and all the members here.
Yeah, after Sonamla, I just want to say a few words. Just like as Sonamla introduced me to you, I want you guys to know like how important this the whole research and the toolkit is for Tibetans. Just letting you guys know, like me, I'm a living person, letting you know that I came here in 2015, end of 2015. And from 2015 till 2022, my paperwork did not work out. So it was a long struggle. I had my wife, 2 children back in India. It was a long struggle. And during that struggle, I did make all out efforts over here coming to the Tibetan Center here, talking to my lawyers, like, this is our situation. Why isn't there something we could do, right? So this materializing really makes me happy, because I feel not everyone should go through this process of having, like, for 7-8 years, I wasn't able to go back to India. I was here. My little daughter, who was at that time just 5 or 6 years old, she was all grown. Like, I was here for 7-8 years without being able to move, just working. That was it. Yeah, that was my life. Yeah. So now I'm really happy that, like, if something could just move on for the new Tibetans who come here, or the Tibetans who are already here, who are undocumented, this is really path breaking. So it's just the first step. I think we all need to be confident. It's just the first step. We've made the right move, and things will move positively for sure. Yeah. So once again, congratulating everyone, and thank you so much. Thank you very much, guys.
You're good to go. Thank you.
Tak Chechu. This is thank you in Tibetan. We will definitely keep that in mind. Tak Chechu.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay.